it's Lynn here. Hope everyone's having an amazing day. Now in this video I'm going to talk to you about how to know when it's time to repot your cactus or succulent. And I'm going to say a little bit of things about what tips I use when I know it's time to pot on. And the first one has got to be the most obvious one, and that's the roots coming through the bottom of the pot, as I'll show you here. Now, I always prefer to keep my plants a little bit under potted, so I don't worry too much if the roots are starting to come through slightly. But obviously in this case, they're coming through quite a bit now, so it's time to pot on, and that's a really obvious one. I mean, everyone knows that, so don't need to go into too much detail about that now. Now the second one will be if the plant, I'll just open this door, it's getting a bit warm in here, if the plant dries out too quick in the pot it's in. Now the plant might not be over potted and the roots not coming through, anything like that, but if you find that every time you go to water your plants they literally dry out within a couple of hours, then obviously the soil is over exhausted and it's drying up too fast. Now I find this happens with a lot of the peat-based compost mixes, and a lot of the cacti and succulents that are for sale in the garden shops and centres always nearly come in peat-based soil, and I just find it dries like cardboard, and it's not only is it very difficult to re-wet again, but it dries up the roots as well and encourages a lot of the root mealybug, only from my experience. So I prefer to make my own soil mix, and I've made a separate video on how to make your own cactus and succulent plant mix, and I'll put the links up above there. Check that video out if you haven't seen it. It will save you loads of money than buying separate mixes, and because I use a soil based mix rather than a peat based mix, I find it's far better. It stops the plants from drying out really fast, and it's far more economical to make your own as well. And I like to use a John Innes soil, either number 2 or number 3, and I go into more details on that video, so check that out guys. But say if your plant dries out really fast and it's not under potted and the roots aren't coming through, then you must refresh the soil, because obviously it's not giving chance for the root system to take up moisture, which these plants need because they store it in their stems. And so it's important that you freshen up the soil. So that's one of them. The other one is if it's too top heavy. Now the problem I find with a lot of cacti and succulents is because, especially the cereus types, like I'll just show these here, these are all my tall cacti, is that when you do go to repot them, a lot of the time they don't have very large root systems, they're not very deep. So if you pot them into a big pot to match their height, obviously they're going to rot. And most cacti and succulents prefer to be a little bit under potted anyway, because you never can it's very hard to rot a cactus if it's under potted, but it's very easy to get root rot if it's over potted, and they don't like to be sitting in stagnant wet soil for too long. But what I tend to do here, now obviously again, if the roots are coming through or the plant is really toppling over, then it's an obvious sign it needs repotting. But if it's just obviously too top heavy for its pot, which you're going to get with cereus type plants like these, I tend to, I mean here they're in the greenhouse, I've sort of wedged them all together so they're not really going to topple over, but when I bring them into the house for the winter, I put a lot of rocks on them, and I'll just show you what I've done here. This is my a puntia. It's a big plant. Obviously it has a shallow root system, and it's in a pot that matches its root system, but because it's very top heavy, I've got a rock from the garden on it, and it stops it from toppling over. So that's a good tip if you have top heavy plants that don't need to be repotted and the soil is perfect and everything. Put a brick or a stone on them and it stops them toppling over. But never overpot a cactus, because that's far more disastrous than underpotting. So in my experience, underpotting usually just causes yellow plants and maybe a little bit shriveled, but never death of a plant. So always under than overpot. And I've made a separate video on how to repot a cactus, and that also goes for succulent as well. I've made a few different videos, so check them out. But I'll put the links up above at the top there on how to repot a cactus, and that goes into more detail there. And the fourth one will be yellowing. Now usually when the soil gets exhausted, a plant can sometimes take on a bit of a yellow appearance, and you'd probably think, oh, that's strange, my plant's well watered, the roots doesn't need repotting, but it's just yellow all the time. Now there could be a number of different reasons for yellowing plants, and one of them is sometimes it can be something as simple as it has a bit too much sunshine. A lot of the aloes, I'll show you my aloes underneath here, these are lovely and green, but if I was to put these on the top shelf here, they would go yellow, because although they're succulents, they don't like too much intense light, so they green up nice. So sometimes it can be something as simple as it's receiving too much sunshine, especially behind glass when they're not getting the ventilation they normally would if they were outdoors. But a lot of the time it can also be going yellow down to the soil being over exhausted. So again, if the plant doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it needing repotting, get it out of the soil, get it out of the pot, check the root system over, and if there's any bugs, which can be one of the reasons why a plant will start to go yellow, because it's not getting a chance to take the nutrients up, then obviously treat it and take all of the old soil off and repot into fresh soil. And again, if it's too much light, move it away into a slightly shadier spot. And the other one is as well, if you find your plant shrivels, sometimes I'll have a plant that doesn't need repotting. Well, I don't think it does at first. I think, oh, you know, it's okay, but you see it's starting to shrivel. And I have a few people say to me, my cactus or my succulent's shrivelling up. It doesn't need repotting, no roots are coming through. And I only repotted it last year or this year, and I don't know why it's shrivelling. Well, I would say to them, get it out of the pot. There's something wrong with the root system, because if you're watering it enough and you're using good quality soil, and it's no sign of it as in dead or anything like that, then it's down to the roots, and it's nearly always down to root mealybugs or something similar. Or it could be something as silly as people using peat-based soil with their succulents and it's drying out too fast. And although they think they're watering it all the time, because it's drying within a couple of hours, the plant's not having a chance to take up the moisture. So again, always use a good quality soil mix. I prefer to use Johnny's number 1 or 2, which is a soil-based compost. I know it's not necessarily available in many other parts of the world. Here in Ireland and the UK, we can get hold of it, and I love it because it's a soil-based one. They do use a bit of peat in the mix. Most Johnny's use a bit of peat, but it's only a small amount, and it's mainly loam-based, which I prefer to use. So if you can't get hold of Johnny's and number 2 or 3 where you live, then any soil-based, rather than predominantly peat-based soil mix would do, with a bit of extra sand and grit. And as I said, links up above there, check out on how to make your own cactus mix there. And that's that one. So just trying to think what else would cover it. Obviously top heavy, we've covered that one. And the oh yes, if your plant has not been repotted in absolutely years, and believe me, I'm a bit guilty of that. I've had plants for a long time and no roots coming through, they seem healthy and everything like that. As an example, this one here, actually, I have had this plant for years, and as you can see, it's really, really healthy. And I think it was in the same pot, really, I'm not joking when I say about 10 years, up until last year, and the roots weren't coming through. It flowered for me every year, nothing wrong with it, but I just thought, you know, I've not repotted this plant for so long, I'm going to have to refresh the soil. So I gave it a bit of a refresh, and it's doubled in size literally in the past year. Look at that, it's beautiful, multi-headed specimen. So if your plant is looks pretty healthy, but you have not freshened up the soil for a long time, I'd recommend going ahead and just repotting it anyway, because it's good to freshen up the soil. And I always recommend obviously fertilising with either a cactus and succulent feed, or I like to use a tomato feed, because I believe anyway encourages lots more blooms. I've had great experience with using that, and I've done a separate video on what I like to feed my cacti and succulent with, so check that video up above if you haven't already. And that's the best advice I can give you when it comes to repotting. And I'll just show you some of my ones I'm going to be repotting on this year that are desperate. I'll just show you this one here, actually at the bottom. This is my pencil plant, and that's desperate to be repotted, so look out for a future video on that. It's very top heavy, and I just hope that that's helped you out, guys, because I'm often being asked, you know, how do you know when it's time to repot your plants? And that's the best advice I can give. So I want to send you loads. Oh yes, check out a blog. I've also done a blog on this on my website as well, and I put the links down below, and it's desertplantsofAvalon.com, so check my website out as well, guys. And I want to send you loads of love, heaps of happiness, and tons of happy growing, as always, from Ireland. Check this little flower out, guys. Until the next video.